There is a space in my heart where I find the truth. I find me in you, a truth beyond what you may see now. But when we are one, we bring more good about. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our peace. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. I see with new eyes, allow and unfold, embrace and let go, trust the flow. There's a freedom in love when you follow your heart. Together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah. There is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Breathe in and out. Slowly feel all that's around you. All that you feel, all that you know. Let it go. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite, yeah, when we unite, oh, we unite, yeah, yeah, when we unite, yeah, you are welcome here. Love is welcome here. Peace is welcome here. You are welcome here.
Yes, 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 we are here. I am so grateful. I am so grateful. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and good day to you wherever you are at this very moment in time. Thank you for tuning in to yourself first. That's important. And then tuning in to Ade Presents, being you. And when you tune in, you listen. You can't help but listening because you're tuned in. And when you tune in and you listen, you will be transformed. You may not know when it's going to happen, but you create the space for transformation to happen. How do I know? I am Ade. I am your transformational beingness artist. This is what I do. I know what I'm talking about. This is episode, what is it? Season 3, episode 15 of Ade Presents Being You, the journey back to yourself. Thank you for being here. Today is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. Being You, this podcast is an invitation. It is an invitation for you to take a look at yourself. How do you see yourself? I mean, really. Not just, I see myself as confident and loving. I love unconditional. No. How do you see yourself? Take a moment and stop. Take a breath and listen. How do you really see yourself? How do you see the world? How do you see yourself in the world? And how do you see the world in you? If you do that, if that's the only thing you do on a daily basis for 1 minute, 2 minutes, you will change your life because you're taking a moment to tune in. And when you tune in, you give yourself permission to live from the inside out. That's what this journey is about. That's how you connect with your ancestors because they're within. We're going to talk more about that. Today's topic is Ancestral Voices through Verona and Dalian. See, they're the voices of our ancestors, of your ancestors. They're echoing the voices of your ancestors. So you better make sure you're listening. And if you're not, hey, I don't know. It is what it is. I don't get to tell you what to do. You get to choose. That's very important. You have to listen to your own inner authority. I want to invite you to join us on our main Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Being You Podcast. That's the Facebook page. Now, wherever you're listening from, watching from, it's fine, it's perfect. However, if you have a comment or a question, that's probably, you can do it on YouTube too. If you don't know, I'll tell you how to get there. But we want to make sure we get to your comments and we want to get to your questions. So if you're a Facebook lover, those of us in our 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s, Instagram will be like, what's that? But anyway, facebook.com/Being You Podcasts. I want to make sure we get to you. You can also join us on YouTube, which is youtube.com/LC Radio, LC Radio. But other than that, keep listening wherever you are. It's fine. All is well. Everything is good. And if you don't want to move and you just want to listen, just put the thoughts out in the ethers. We'll catch it. If I don't catch it, Dalian will catch it. If Dalian don't catch it, because we're too wrapped up in the conversation, Verona just with a smile and just show up like, I want to say this. I don't know why. So you're good. We got the Holy Trinity going on here. Quick announcements. Let's go through it. If you are looking for a podcast hosting site, or maybe you're a podcaster, you're thinking of podcasting, I want to suggest Libsyn. That's LIBSYN.com. They have a lot of services on there, different plans. Check it out. The only thing you need to know, the most important thing you need to know is use the promo code ADE, ADE, promo code. That gives you at least a month free. However, if you sign up any time of the month after the first of a month, then you get, so for example, if you sign up today, today's the 13th, you get the whole of April free and the whole of May free. If you sign up on the first of the month, like if you sign up May 1st, then just don't do it. I don't even need to explain. Don't do it on the first of the month. Do it after the first of the month, and you can get some goodies. Promo code ADE, ADE. I'm passing the crown over to you. Wednesday, Ricky Byers, my dear friend, and I, we host a show on Facebook and Instagram. No, well, actually, I do it on Instagram, but it's Facebook and YouTube. Soul Fulfilling, soulful songs and soulful conversations. That's every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And for those of us in the UK, that's 2 a.m. 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. UK time. So Fulfilling with Ricky Byers and yours truly. And what else? Kathy Stringer, A Woman's Journey of Healing and Hope. Check out their website, womansjourneyretreat.com, WOMANS journeyretreat.com. find out that's coming up next week. Is it next week? Oh, yeah. Actually, no, in about a few days. This weekend, Saturday, April 17th to the 18th. It's online wherever you are in the world. You can join. This is for women to get together, to heal together. Healing happens. Powerful healing happens in community. And if it resonates with you and you're going to sign up, use this. Blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to rush, but I'm going to take a breath. Because there's no need to rush. Everything that needs to be said will be said today. Promo code for Kathy Stringer's website retreat, my dear friend, is WJ2021- or hyphen LCA. That's Life Coach Ade. LCA. Not Life Coach. Don't put the whole thing now. WJ2021- or hyphen, whatever works for you, LCA. And I think this is the last one. Yes, it is. I'm hosting a 3-month series event called Representing Our Ancestors, Representing Our Stories. The first event is April 24th with my dear friend Michelle Jordan. We're actually going to be, the first one is going to be a grief ritual. The second one is creating a collective story, collective and individual stories. We create a new story, right? And then the next one is November. What am I talking about? Is creating new visions. So the first one is April 24th. The second one is May 15th. And the third one is June 19th. What is it all about? It's simply about representing our ancestors in a whole new way. We get to tell a new narrative. We get to humanize them, talk about their joy, talk about their dreams, talk about their visions. Them, you know, the story about them being oppressed, yes, that's true, but there's more to them. They dreamed. They played joke. They had, you know, they played games. They celebrated one another. They even in their vulnerability, they didn't stop believing, and they stayed alive long enough to pass life on to you. So rather than comparing with what we're being told, some of the stories is not true, we get to tell our own stories. And when you represent your ancestors, you get to represent your story. Come check it out. The website link for that is bit.ly, bit.ly, represent ancestors, bit.ly/represent ancestors. Go there to give you more information. All right, I think I moved through this fast enough. I'm giving myself a pat, even though I told myself to slow down. Now I'm boasting about speeding through it. I am so conflicted sometimes. Life is good, it's getting better. I am getting ready to bring on our guests. I am so happy to have them here today. Charlie is in the house. Welcome, Charlie. Thank you for being here. My dear Aries sister, nice to see you. Thank you, thank you. Quali is here. New Jace, Jackie, and then the silent listeners, Dorothy. Slow it down. Yes, you must register. You got to be there. Yeah, I need to take a breath. And you can join me in taking a deep breath, because that connects you with yourself, with your soul, with your spirit, with your ancestors. Breath is life. Life is God. God is the divine. It is the only thing that is everywhere evenly present, and you're a part of it. There is no spot where it is not. It is in everything. You are an expression of it. So when you take a deep breath, you're connecting to your beingness. So let me tell you a little bit about our guests. Most of you know them, and if you don't, hey Lisa, nice to see you on IG. If you don't, you get to know them, and husband and wife couple, they have been, you know, they will be, and they are written into history because they have given everything. You talk about blood, sweat, and tears to remind us, to support us in representing our ancestors, our stories. Anyway, let me read a short bio. Dalian and Verona Adofo are the co-founders of Ancestral Voices, an educational initiative that provides learning resources that covers the spectrum of African spiritual cosmologies, philosophies, and practice. It consists of 2 featured-length documentaries, published books, of research findings in English, French, and Spanish, and online courses. Their website address is ancestralvoices.co.uk, ancestralvoices.co.uk, not .com, especially for those of you in America, .co.uk. What kind of website and link is that? Don't worry about that. Just type it, okay? Doesn't matter. You can find them on Facebook at Ancestral Voice Films. Is that voice or voices? Let me just double check. Let me double check that. Let me Ancestral Voice or Ancestral Voices? Voices. Leslie? I don't want to give the wrong. Yeah, because we got voice here, so I think that's it. If it's wrong, we'll correct it when they come up. I think Dalian is posting something. But well, if I get it wrong when they come back, we'll fix it. On Instagram is Ancestral Voices, Ancestral_Voices, and Twitter Ancestral Voices. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of like But anyway, let me bring them on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, psychics and skeptics, physical beings and non-physical beings, psychics and skeptics, help me welcome my brother, my sister, myself to the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, we can't hear you. Your mic is muted for some reason. You muted yourself.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry.
You're the Ancestral Voices. You can't come in here muted now. You got something to say.
Exactly. We just saying peace. Give thanks for such a hearty welcome, brother Ade. You know, I'm Dalian.
I'm Verona, and thank you, Ade, for inviting us on the show. We're honored to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here. So I've been corrected. So on Facebook, it's Ancestral Voices Films. Same, so it's all Ancestral. Right. Google them. When you Google them, you find everything about them. Go on YouTube. They're just content for days. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I feel so honored and so grateful for having you both here. I've been following you for a long time and watching what you're doing online. It is, you know, I feel like there's a word that's coming up. I don't have it yet, but I would just say I'll use grateful. I'm grateful for what you're doing. I'm grateful for your dedication and your commitment, because I know that it's, you know, on camera, it looks kind of easy, but behind the scenes, you're like trying to get this and figuring that and doing that. Make sure you have it, and we go live. You're like, "Hello, how's everyone doing?" Before now, you've been sweating, and that's just not a metaphor for going live, but in your life in general. So, thank you for your commitment and saying yes to the voices of your ancestors. And as you do, other people are hearing and listening to the voices of their ancestors. If you ever have doubts that what you're doing is making a difference, I don't think you do, but sometimes that can creep in. You're making a big difference. You're making a big difference.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, brother Ade, for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I feel like I want to call Dalian the professor. Because when he's interviewing people, man, he's just opening the pages and you're getting in there.
The thing is, people actually call him that. That's funny.
Really? He's got like 5 books and bookmarkers and said, let's go to page this. And it's like, we won't get to all of it today.
Yeah, you know, you have to be excited by the knowledge, you know.
Yes.
Beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is. Well, let's jump in. So I'm going to start with Verona first. On being you, Ade Presents being you, you know, I believe that our name says a lot about us. And it is our soul signature. Even if we know it or not, we carry ourselves based on the energy of our names. So I'm going to start with you, Verona. Tell us the meaning of your name and what it means to you.
Well, this is the thing. This has always been something that's followed me growing up. So my name is Verona. And despite having Jamaican parents, they named me after an Italian city, which neither of them have gone to before. They didn't know it existed. Obviously, it's quoted in Shakespeare as well. So there's that whole story. But I have not been to the city of Verona. I do plan to at some point. But that's what my name means. So it's very random. I still don't know the significance and relevance of having this name. But I'm sure it will come to reveal itself over time. But that's what my name, that's what Verona is. It's an Italian city.
Mm. The way you said it, like, I don't even know why they give me an Italian name.
They knew somebody with the name, and they're like, "Oh, I like that name," and that was literally it. And so that was the reason why.
You're like, really? You're Jamaican? Come on! And Dalian?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm Asante, so that's my first name. But the Dalian in itself, it's also a city in China, and I know the name Dalian itself. You know, you find it's a Chinese name. It also happens to be a Middle Eastern name as well. But my actual designated name at birth is Yao, and Yao in the Akan culture is someone born on a Thursday. You know, so that's what that's my Krading, or what they call your destiny name, because your Krad is another one of the expressions for your destiny in my culture, and then Ding is your name, so you have a destiny name, and it's associated with the day of the week that you're born. You know, so yeah, that's what mine means.
It's funny because I'm looking at you. I mean, I don't think I've had the thought, but you said your name is also linked to China. It's like, when I look at you, you do favor like the Chinese emperor. That little thing on top of your head. It is a wrap.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna have to find one of those and make that happen for
or whatever. You find a weave or weave somewhere.
Yeah, you have actually. I'll have one that flashes in lights, you know, like and then colored one maybe.
Yeah, only a few people can see it. I can see it. I can see it now that you pointed it out.
So it's interesting that you say that. So we both have cities as our names. And we were both born with umbilical cords around our necks.
Wow. Which is a nice segue to what I want to ask you, because how it all began, this story. I know it's a longer story based on what I've heard you guys share, but your ancestors booked an appointment for you both. You didn't know it, to meet at a party, and it was all up in your breath, smelling chocolate. You know,
yeah.
Like, wait, what is it? Kit Kat? I can't remember what it was. Like, yeah. I've been in your business.
Yeah, now that's good. I love that. You know,
and then you got in a car together, and just your ancestors would just celebrate, like, yes, we got them together. Either of you can tell the story or fill in the gaps and how you came together before really naming the destiny, the combined destiny, Ancestral Voices.
So we ended up meeting at a barbecue of a friend of ours, a mutual friend who had mutual friends. And so that's how we ended up meeting at this barbecue. So despite learning later that Dalian literally lived about 10 minutes walk from my house, I'd never seen him before. We went to the opposite end of London, met Dalian at the barbecue, fine. We just did the pleasantries, hello, whatnot, and it was fine. And it was only because him and his friend lived near where I lived, I offered them a lift home. And so on the ride home, literally Dalian and I were just talking the whole journey. And it was just nice to actually speak with someone who was on a similar wavelength, who was quite open to my ideas and the things that I was speaking about. And earlier in the day is when the whole chocolate thing happened. Do you want to explain that? That's just random, mate.
Yeah, well, you know, it's just one of those. You know, I think when you're kind of even on if you want to call it, or within a spiritual form of consciousness, one of the means of perceiving spirit is through your senses. You know, so one of the key things I recommend, and I'll tell everyone is to work actively on your senses. You know, the ability to differentiate between things is key. It's an essential part of most things. I think for me, even before I became, should we say, fully aware of the spiritual essence with scent, it's just something that I liked. I just like scent. I don't know why, but I just had this affinity to scent, you know. And yeah, one of the things was being able to tell the difference between the chocolate that people eat, you know. So in Verona's case, it was Kit Kat. And I think maybe it becomes one of those things that you don't even think of it consciously as a party trick, but then it, you know, it kind of garners interest because then people realize, oh, okay, you can go deep on a certain level, you know. And yeah, so that Kit Kat, I think it broke many barriers, you know. And
oh, I think yeah. Have a break. Have a Kit Kat.
yeah,
Many barriers. Which one is Kit and which one is Cat? Which one? Is
yeah, we're gonna decide that after this. You just excellent, yeah, beautiful.
You know, it's so profound. You talked about both of you had an umbilical cord around your neck. You're named after a city, and the Kit Kat. Even that's a two thing, and just the weird way of somebody coming up to you, Verona, and saying, "You've been eating Kit Kat." I know that must have been the most craziest thing you ever heard. Like, yes, but come on.
I just thought that was just crazy. I was just like, really? How did you know?
And for me, it shows that, how do I say this? That what is for us is for us. And somehow life, our ancestor spirit, the divine, however you want to describe it, will bring us together. And it's important to pay attention. And I wanted to go somewhere to talk about the soul for a minute. But before I do that, I want to really come back to you both. Because the theme for this month on Being You is liberating the soul of Africans in the diaspora, in the motherland.
Beautiful.
And sometimes, well, we've been told a lot of stories. There's a lot of people written books on BS, and they say because in a book it's true, and then we read it, it's in a book, it's gotta be true. But you pick up intuitively, well, you can't really prove it, so we deny it. But the thing is, I want to kind of go back to your stories individually. Once again, I'll start with you, Verona, because you were at a stage where you were questioning your journey. I'm sure most of the listeners may know that story, but I think it's a good way to lay a foundation, because there might be some people who are questioning their journey, maybe want to step away from what they learned. Maybe it's Christianity or whatever it is, being Muslim, whatever. So I think your story will be helpful. Can you share your story and how you got here to opening your voice so you can be a voice for the ancestors?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I grew up, as I mentioned before, in a Jamaican home. My mum was quite religious, but my dad was atheist. But it was still a Christian home, but I didn't go to church. So even though I was aware of like the religion and so forth, it wasn't something that was heavily pushed. But in my spirit at that time, even at a very young age, I knew that it wasn't for me. And so I went through many years of my life just not believing in anything. I was atheist for quite a long time, like for my whole teenage years. I was just like, I don't believe in anything. And I got to, I think, 2001 was my sort of what I would describe as my awakening, a moment. That's when 9/11 happened. I started becoming really interested in just learning about the world and conspiracy theories, and it just opened up so much for me that I started questioning my entire reality and everything I've ever believed up until this point. And at that, it was that made me really start to question the world. It was also at that point that my dad passed away. And before he actually passed away, I dreamt about it 4 nights before. That year was also the year that I saw my first psychic. So then that opened up the whole idea of a spiritual realm. And so it was like a catalyst. At that point, it was like, wow, there's just so much that I don't know and I need to learn. And so it was a process of unlearning and relearning. And then I navigated towards the sort of new age route. Because there were a lot of spiritual concepts there that resonated with me deeply. And I thought, this is actually giving me some food for the soul that I wasn't getting before in my home growing up from what I was taught. But then after a while, I thought, there's still something missing. There's something not right. I didn't like the fact that you could see there was a complete omission of particularly African cultures, but many cultures across the globe. And so for me, that's where I became really interested in knowing my story and learning about my people and just, exploring outside of Egypt. Because when people talk about Africa, it's always this fixation and focus on Egypt. But I wanted to know what was going on in the rest of the African continent. And so once I started to question that, it was like, wow, you know, my world opened up even more. And it was around this time that I met Dalian. So clearly, as my vibration started to change and my frequency started to change, we came in alignment with each other. And it was because of our meeting and our union and conversations that we had that led us to go on to Ancestral Voices.
Yes. I love it. I just love it. Anyway, because I can stay with that and go many places, but I won't. Dalian, what about your story? How did you get to a place where you were able to surrender to the voices of your ancestors, especially coming from Ghana and being in a country where, you know, African spirituality, get that out of here. No, that's evil.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting that you said about, well, pretty much all African countries do this. You can only be Christian or Muslim, you know.
Right.
So there's not much more to it than that. I think if we're quote unquote lucky, because there's no particularly such thing as luck, took me was that it comes through the name. Because with my name, I'm again named after my grandmother, and her name is Ya. She was also born on a Thursday. So my name is Nana Yao, with the reference being that I'm named after another Yao or Ya, you know. So when she passed away, about, this will be 6 years later, when I was finishing high school or secondary school, as is known in Africa, I started getting these impressions, you know, or even coming into the knowledge that I had a direct connection or accessibility to my grandmother, you know, and that I was to foster this communication, you know. I guess for me, I think you said, how did I, in a sense, even trust in it? I guess because it was a family member that I was very familiar with in the flesh, it didn't feel quote unquote scary. So the kind of propaganda that is around what we will call African spiritual systems or cosmologies didn't affect me as much, because the person who I could feel, see, and hear wasn't some Hollywood figment. You know, it wasn't some doll that looked like Chucky or you know, that guy, Dr. No, you know, all these ideas that have been psychically forced into black people's heads about what African spirituality is. I didn't have any of that. I just knew this was my elder, my grandma, who I kind of loved very much. You know, we had a very special relationship. So I just followed the instructions to go along. And, you know, the process evolved over the years. I never had a need to not listen, if you see what I mean. It was a comfortable connection. I was willing. So yeah, the surrender, that's the word that you've mentioned. It was already there from beginning, because it was familial and it was ancestral, you know, and then that guidance and teaching has progressed over time. So by the time I came to England for college to further my education, I wasn't really going to church at all anyway. You know, so the only thing that I had, and that had, in a sense, sustained me even to come into England at that point, was this relationship that I had built up with the essence of my grandmother, you know, and following just a single day in the week, whereby I would spend a few minutes in conversation with her, you know. So that's how it came to me. There wasn't any master teacher, so to speak. It was just me just opening up and saying, hey, you know, I have this connection. Let me just learn from it. And it's never, the learning has never stopped.
Yes. And I hear what you say about no master teacher, but there's something in that too. Your grandmother was the master teacher. That connection,
of course,
is in your blood.
Of course.
You know, it's in your blood. Where, and I understand what you mean about growing up in Ghana. You didn't have all the other stuff that people have around it. I just wanted to kind of have you share that so we can lay a foundation as Africans. So let's talk about African spirituality, particularly the theme, as I said, is liberating the soul of Africans in diaspora and the motherland. From an African perspective, what is the soul?
Yeah. That's a very broad question, you know.
It is, because it means different things to different people. So yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. What we would call the soul is, in essence, also what we would call a part of the spirit. And in African cosmological thinking, the spirit is very broad. So, you know, there's a few things that we'll have to mention, because it's far from being a singular entity. You know, if you use the word spirit, you get the understanding that you're talking about a thing, you know. And so even when you talk about a soul, again, it's a thing. But in African understanding, it's not so. It's many things. What we call your spirit or your soul, in its broadest sense, is the intangible aspects of you. You know, the part that people might call invisible. You know, what actually gives you your consciousness is invisible. So, to keep it simple, that really is your soul. You know, but then what we call your intangible or invisible aspects of yourself is not just your consciousness, meaning the thoughts that you have. We also know your thoughts can affect things like your emotions. You know, so what you're thinking about can either make you happy or can make you sad. These are all aspects of your spirit, of which we can call an aspect your soul. In the African viewpoint, to keep it very simple, your soul or spirit consists of 5 aspects. There's one that is your direct connection to the creative source, you know, what we call your Ashe, your Sun, your Ka in the ancient Egyptian system, your Uri in the Yoruba system. Is basically the energetic aspect of yourself that gives you animation, that makes you alive. There's then within that aspect of yourself too, you have what we will call perhaps your spiritual double. So let's say that's the second aspect of yourself. And your spiritual double, what that decides is the reason why you've taken this body and are living on the earth at the minute, what people call your soul purpose or your soul mission. You know, why have you taken on the body? So this is still an aspect of yourself, you know. And then we have your ancestral self. You have an aspect of your spirit that is also ancestral. So this is where we get the understanding of where your ancestral knowledge flows, because it's an aspect of you that's also always open, you know. Then we have things like your transcendental self, which in African understanding is where the part of you that goes on what we call astral traveling, or, you know, can explore other realms which we cannot perceive in the physical, you know. So these are just like 4 simplified aspects of what we can even call your soul already. So it's quite in depth. It's quite in depth. It's very, very in depth. You know?
Verona, you want to add anything to that?
He summed it up very well. There's nothing I can add to what he just said.
Without sounding like an echo.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because even as you break it down, you talk about a direct connection, spiritual double, which maybe had some kind of like, oh, so you mean there's another part of me kind of acting a fool, or or whatever.
Exactly.
I often joke sometimes, and I literally feel like I'm hijacked, because I just feel not hijacked in a way where I don't have control, but it's like, okay, what I'm feeling now is beyond me. So now I know I've been hijacked by my spiritual double. So you talk about the ancestral self and transcendental self. These selves, essence of us, they're not linear, right? They're not linear. It's not like there's a state you can measure it. It's all blended together. I guess like vibration, like water, ice, and steam. You know.
There you go. Yes, all the same, but also at the same time different. Yeah,
exactly. So I want to come back to this, but I want to ask you both. When you think of the theme, liberating the soul of Africans in the diaspora and the motherland, what comes up for you?
Yeah, for me, the first thing that comes up is self-love and acceptance. And I feel that us as African people from birth, we are just constantly bombarded with this kind of notion that we're not good enough, and you know, there's all this negative stigma and propaganda that's put on us from childhood to adulthood, and you know, the depiction of Africa as well growing up has been highly negative and perceived as backward, something to be ashamed of. And I think there's so much healing that takes place when we just accept ourselves as who we are as African people and embrace it. So
Yes.
part of that, would you say the healing of the soul of Africa? The liberation of the soul of Africa is about being who we are, truly authentic, and being prideful of who we are. And I believe that's tied into the work that we at Ancestral Voices are doing. Is we're removing the stigma that surrounds these spiritual traditions, and we're holding up the information and saying, look, this is what it is. This is
Right.
what you've been taught to be scared of. But when you break it down and actually look at what it is, this is empowering knowledge that can be used to benefit and once again liberate us. So the liberating of the soul of Africa is through self-knowledge, self-love, and through releasing any projections that people have put on us over the years and just claiming who we are as individuals.
Yes. Dalian?
Well, pretty much Verona has kind of covered it all. But yeah, what I can add to it is exactly what it says on the tin, really. Soul liberation. So if we know what we're calling your soul, is really your total self, because it's your soul too that controls the physical aspect of yourself. Then it's about giving yourself free autonomy, that there is no limits and barriers except what you create. So for you to be able to do that, you have to be proud enough of who you think you are and having that acceptance. And this is important because it affects even your ability, or what you perceive to be your ability to be able to do anything or change anything. Because if you do not believe that you're capable of anything, you don't even bother to try anything because there's no point. So the part of that soul liberation is understanding, and really, nobody even has to become an African spiritualist overnight. But in the same way as we know that when we claim knowledge about our lineage and our history, it gives us a different understanding of ourselves and our capability. In the same way, we cannot just try and embrace all of African expression and then just say that part is still devil worship or whatever. That means we can never be complete. You don't have to be a follower, but at least have an understanding. So you can leave a kind of negative bias away from our system. There's no most of these sadly Christian channels that you watch now, especially on the continent, where they're constantly talking about ancestral curses and stay away from your traditions. If they were saying this about something like Islam, for instance, it would become hate speech. Churches would be shut down. But then, because there's still no degree of, should we say, respect even for African spiritual traditions, hence why this occurs. And it keeps us locked in a kind of rat, a spiritual rat. So we're stuck in a place where we don't think we can move beyond, or we even have the ability to move beyond. So the notion of soul liberation is about accepting self in all totality, and then giving yourself the autonomy to make it what you want it to be. So yes, it's an empowering space.
It is. And as so many places, we forget, or some of us don't know, that when we reject our history, when we reject our culture, our tradition, we're rejecting ourselves. We're rejecting our creativity. So all we have, if you reject your creativity, all you have is to duplicate what someone else is saying or doing. And we keep wondering why we don't feel free. And yes, it's not exclusive to just Africans. This is a human dis-ease. However, we know that it's important to basically save ourselves. And I want to hear your thoughts on this, speaking of saving ourselves, because sometimes it seems that there's more energy going towards countering the false narrative. And for me, liberating the souls of Africans in the diaspora and motherland is spend less time trying to counter the bullshit and let's focus on what we are about. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 100%. I think in the beginning of when Ancestral Voices started, we did a lot of the sort of counter thing. And we did that. And to be fair, we started 11 years ago. So the consciousness has changed a lot in that time. So at the time, we felt the need to kind of contrast some African spiritual knowledge against what we're more familiar with within Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, whatever. But definitely, I agree with what you said, Ade. I think you get to a point where you're like, I'm not participating in anyone else's game. I know what it is, and this is what we need to do, and just go forward. And this is why I'm really strong about being mindful of what we believe in terms of limitation and so forth, because we could have not done Ancestral Voices. We could have said we don't have enough money to do it, or that people don't, you know,
Right.
won't be, because initially when we first wanted to start the original documentary, we were like, you know, is this something we could take to production company or something? But then we thought they're not going to support this kind of narrative being put forward, because we're not going down the same negative propaganda stigma route that's already been out there. We're actually trying to show a flip side. So because of our mindset, we would be like, do you know what? We don't need to rely on anyone else. We're going to make this happen ourselves. And so it becomes very important to create our own spaces and have that mentality where you're like, we're going to do what we know we need to do. And it doesn't matter what anyone else says about it. And that was our motivation throughout the whole way through, is that this is what we're going to do, and just stick to our guns. And, you know, it's not been an easy journey. It's definitely not been easy at all, but we've done it. And, you know, we're proud of that.
You definitely have. I'm feeling led to ask this question, even though it may seem like how that's not really important, but it is, because as part of the liberation, there is a saying that says, freedom ain't free.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom ain't free because you have to give up something. You got to invest your time. And you've talked about your journey in coming up with the first documentary. Can you talk maybe just in short about, were there things that you encountered that made you go, maybe we're not supposed to do this? You know, because sometimes it's easy for people to say, well, I call people and everybody's saying no, so maybe I'm just not supposed to do it. Because that's part of the liberation. It's like, if you feel it in your soul, even if you're in the middle of a mountain and there is no opening, you will find a way out. What are some of the things that you went through, and how did you navigate the maybe the oppression, metaphorically, of not enough funding, the oppression of hard drive going crazy, and all that?
Do you want to go? Yeah, so as you said, I see you've been watching our interviews. I like it.
Oh, yeah, I'll pay attention. I'll pay attention.
So, yes, so initially with the first film, I'm trying to go back to 11 years ago now, but yes. So one of the first things, when we put out the petition in the beginning to see who was interested in being in the documentary, we didn't really get much people taking up the offer, and I'm assuming that they were kind of like, who's behind this project? We need to find out a bit more. So it was even hard to get people to be in the original documentary. Then in addition to that, there was the financial aspect, the fact that we literally invested all of our own money to bring this project to life. And that included traveling to Ghana and doing all stuff to film. We did it all, like literally the camera equipment, all of that stuff we did ourselves. And then in addition to that, the hard drive actually broke during the part 2. But yeah, we would have situations where we would go turn up to an interview, and we had about 5 batteries, and all of the batteries would be dead. And so we would have to reschedule the interview date and go and do it again. Like, we really felt like there were forces trying to hold us back from what we were trying to do. But at the same time, we still weren't deterred. Despite all of those obstacles we had to overcome, we were just like, no, we're going to do this. Like, this is definitely going to happen.
Yeah, no, and even in us, as you're saying, that, you know, we realized that, and this is more to do with, it brought up for me, as you and Ade were just having that, the notion of sacrifice, you see, because then we have to understand what sacrifice is actually mean. And it's interestingly enough too that it's sacrifice too, which is one of the words that make people now most scared of African spirituality, because sacrifice in a sense seeks to bring balance. You have to give something out so something else can come in. You know, and perhaps what we're afraid of is how much are we willing to sacrifice in order to see forth what we want to bring into beingness, you know. Because for me, I could see whereby, like when I was in college in my late teens, and I was doing a media and communication course, and at that time I had the imprint. Why don't you do a documentary about your Asante spiritual traditions. And I was like, no. You do this kind of stuff now, nobody will talk to you again. So you just okay, let's put that to the side and move on. Because you also try to fit within what we call society, you know, and be accepted as normal, whatever normal actually means. And then it came back when I was doing my undergraduate degree, and I ended up deviating and turning into like a little design book, but we didn't really go deeper. Then again, I came and I met V, and then at that point, we realized putting our skills together becomes very important to create something. You know, we're reminded there of Dr. Henry Clark's quote, take what you know best and do it for your people. You know, we're people who, through no fault of our own, have been disadvantaged for many centuries. We have to understand we're not always going to get some institution or organization come in to save you. There's no Superman, you know. Some of us seem to think one guy on the cross can come save them, so then they leave out their own self-responsibility.
Exactly.
None of anybody's religion, because this even applies to religious people. You know, I believe there's a Bible verse. I was raised in a Catholic school, so I don't remember them all, but I can tell you, it talks about a parable where people are given certain talents or certain amount of money, and it's the one who uses it wisely who, in a sense, brings favor to this concept we call God. You know, so that teaches you about self prowess, you're not here expecting a savior, but that you save and lead forward yourself. You know, so the notion of sacrifice is across, whether it's a spiritual consciousness you have or a religious one, it's about sacrifice. So we have to be willing to put in that work too, for a lot of us, you know. But yeah, no, we've had many challenges, but again, the other thing is, once we sacrifice, we have transformation.
That's right.
Because if you didn't have any obstacles, then how are you learning? Where's the expansion? What did you learn along the journey to arrive at the destination you wanted? If there was no challenge,
Right.
Then you're already where you already are. Meaning,
that's right.
Yourself, you know? Nothing new has been added.
You just turned around and you're back home.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Did a 360, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the challenges have been useful. They've helped us. Yeah.
I love what you said about the sacrifice, because sacrifice also is a process of making something sacred.
Yes.
You know, and the idea of the frustration, to sacrifice the frustration of like 4 batteries, really? You know, but still not give up. It's like we're giving up the part of ourselves. We're sacrificing the part of ourselves to saying, I just can't do this.
Yes.
And a faith beyond faith to say, we're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And
regardless.
Regardless.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point that the end result is not as important as compared to the transformation that you went through.
It's true.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I would say that became more apparent by the time we did the sequel documentary, because the film Spirit is Eternal took a whopping 5 years to make. So you could just imagine the transformation that happened throughout that process. And, you know, we were challenged on all different levels. So there was the fact that we had the financial restrictions to deal with. So that meant that we could only film at particular locations at a certain time when we could, you know, financially afford it. Then we got to a stage where we had the whole timeline in place of the edit. And then the hard drive was literally on its last legs. It started to crash and keep conking out. And you mentioned faith and sacrifice. And it's true. I got to a point where I was like, all right, this thing is not really going to conk out on me. Like, I'm going to save this thing one more time. Like, we're not going to lose the last how many of years of work.
You put on that black woman power, like, no, I'm going to resurrect you.
The file actually managed to save before the hard drive conked out once and for all. And so that's how we even have the final film out today. So we had a lot of obstacles. And I think, you know, it's a testament to ourselves how much we've been really committed to this. And I know for a fact for myself, honestly, I've never, ever been as dedicated and as focused to anything in my whole life outside of this project. Like when we started, it was just like, yes, we have to do that. I was so excited. Like, yes, do we have to do this? Like, we need to share this information. It's necessary. And Yeah, here we are.
Here we
Still
are,
doing.
exactly 11 years later.
Yeah.
11 years later. So I want to talk about African spirituality and then move into, well, I won't tell you that yet, because if I tell you, the professor is going to answer that question and then I have to come up with another question. What are some of the differences between African spirituality compared to Western spirituality or Eastern spirituality? What are some of the main differences that sometimes many people don't even know?
Absolutely. I actually would argue that they're more similar than different. And I would say throughout this, 11 years of researching and studying, that's what's really stood out to me is I'm thinking, wow, so all this time, there's all these similarities in the understanding of, say, the concept of God and the fact that God is manifested within nature. And you'll find this in like a lot of indigenous cultures across the globe. So what I found fascinating was how come this has been stigmatized so heavily when no one else is getting this level of oppression? So that's what really stood out to me. Is there anything that you'd say?
No, I think it's also exactly the same, because that has come up before, where we've come to the understanding of, you see, when everything is a nature centered, so what they might call Native American or Aboriginal or even the Eastern philosophies or even European paganism, because they're based on the natural cycles and seeking an affinity and reflection of natural cycles within the self, you will find more similarities than disparity or difference. And again, this is one of the reasons why we still find it very disconcerting that, the Eastern philosophies, even though once upon a time were considered as in the same, like negatively by Western culture, post the Beatles and the whole kind of hippie-ish period, and they all discovered Nirvana all of a sudden now. The Buddhist temple, you have big, massive ones all over the world, you have yoga all over the world, but where do you see African spirituality? You still don't see it. So then we have to now start to be questioning as to why is this, when we have a system that sits on pretty much the same confluence as the rest, what exactly is going on? So there's more similarity than difference.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes. Because the only Bible, if you will, or scripture is nature itself, So
You better preach. That is so true. That is so true. Nature. It is our nature. We see it. So many things going on. I'm feeling like, well, I know this. I know this. The reason Africa is so demonized is because of its power.
Absolutely.
Do you know? I don't know if you guys know Brother Ishmael Tete. He started Ethereum mission, and I think he's. Oh my God, yeah. I'm sending you his information, Brother Ishmael Tete.
Please do, because the name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's an African mystic. He lives in Ghana. He has a church called Ethereum Mission. I've interviewed him many times. Oh my God.
Yes.
He brings the commonality between Western spirituality, and so it's the same, and reminds people. And when you say, "Who are you?" he says, "I am Brother Ishmael Tete. I am a student of nature. Nature is my teacher."
Yes, no, I'm not sure if it's. I know the name from Dr. Latte or who else? Who else would have mentioned Ishmael Tete to me? Yeah, Dr. Latte from Emory University.
Oh, Emmanuel Latte, yes. He probably is him. Oh,
yeah,
you gotta check out Brother Ishmael Tete.
Yeah,
he's kind. And that's a whole.
We'll
talk about that. We'll be having a coffee chat, and we'll forget the listeners. Kiana said, he's the truth. He is the truth. For me, meeting him, I think when I met him first I think he came to Hillside in Atlanta, or maybe through Agape International Truth Center. He reaffirmed me. Because there was a time when I'm thinking, okay, this spiritual stuff that I'm getting, great, but I'm always seeing just white people represent spirituality. The teachers are mostly white people, and nobody of color. It's like, come on, there's got to be a reflection. And
Absolutely.
for me, my dad is Muslim, my mom was Christian. And so for me, and I remember when I first moved to America, and I would tell people, they would say
Yeah,
to me,
they
"How
were
did
like,
that
"What?"
happen?" I'm
Yeah,
like, "What you mean that happened? They got
yeah,
married. No, your
yeah,
dad is Muslim, your mom's Christian."
yeah. It's
I'm
not
like,
supposed to
I
happen.
don't get it. And then later on, I realized, oh yeah, you stick to your religion in America. You keep them separate.
Sadly, too politicized, you know.
It so much so, so much so. So, what are some of the things that you would suggest, recommend that we can do individually, collectively, to reclaim our story, ourselves, and liberating ourselves from the BS? What are some of the practices that you would share?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, the first one, it's not even a spiritual one at the point. I think the first thing is to start to learn about yourself. We go to school, we learn about everybody else's history, culture, blah, 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 and we leave that institution without knowing nothing about ourselves. So it's
Mhm.
so important to start learning about yourself, history, culture, all of that stuff. But taking it more onto the spiritual side, learning about your own lineage is really important as well. So, if you're like myself, you may be only able to go back to like a couple of generations. That may be the case for many people as well. But learning about your own family line is really important because, as Dalian mentioned earlier, that's your ancestry is your DNA. That's where your power source comes from. All that knowledge exists within you. So you can start tapping into this ancestral wisdom by literally paying homage to your ancestors who came before you. And I can personally attest to that. That process for me is what started me on this journey, which started, awakening my ability to spot signs and symbols and receive communication. So this can be something as simple as lighting a candle in their honor, or pouring libation, which is the act of pouring water to the earth, or a plant pot if you're in your home or something. And so you can have an altar, but equally as well, we have to realize that we are the altar. The knowledge is already within us. These physical gestures are ways for us to kind of symbolically connect, and to also, like, I'm somebody who I like a focal point. So having an altar for me helps me to focus my mind. I feel very much in that sacred place when I do that. But the act of ancestral reverence in itself, I'd recommend anyone who doesn't know where to begin, anyone who's like, I don't know what to do, I don't even know who my ancestors are, whether you're adopted, doesn't matter. They are still you, they exist within you. Call on them. If you don't know their direct names, then you can make a general petition call to your ancestors in general to help guide you in your life. And I'm telling you, just that one thing will
Yes.
start to open up different avenues in your life. First of all, it will open up different avenues in your mind, which will then manifest in your reality. So when I say open up different avenues in your mind, is that your perception of reality will change. You will suddenly become a lot more aware of that you are far greater than your physical vessel, and that you are a spiritual being in this physical body, but you are so much greater. And this will become very apparent in your daily experiences. As we mentioned nature earlier, nature will literally come alive to you. You will see nature in a completely different way. You'll become so aware of the animal symbols that you'll see every day. You may find like a dog that just follows you down the street every day, or you may have a butterfly that lands on your shoulder. And all of these types of things that happen may sound crazy if I'm just talking to people, but these are all forms of subtle symbolism which are mirroring the relationship that we have now started to create with our ancestors. So these are the types of ways that we can experience their communication. It can also happen via dreams and so forth as well. But becoming aware of the subtle symbolisms around you are ways that you can help to build that relationship with your ancestors and understand what it is that they're trying to communicate with you.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and it's all that Verona said and more. What only little bit I can add is the fact that that learning is very important. So one of and V mentioned about it not being necessarily spiritual, but it is, because even when
Right.
you read, which is why we have these scriptures in certain
True.
religions,
Yeah.
and they've managed to stay longer than most, because the act of reading implants knowledge in your mind.
Yeah.
And your mind, when we get deeper into the traditions, we realize your mind is also this expression that we can call God. you know, and it's connected.
It is
not
a gateway, right? It is a gateway.
Yeah,
It's a pathway.
absolutely, a gateway to a whole collective consciousness, which
Yes.
is that essence. So by reading and feeding that essence, it expands your understanding. Perhaps might even open that ancestral channel of communication, because you might go, let's say, read about, for instance, the Shona people of Southern Africa. Maybe you might read about a little ritual that they do, and all of a sudden, in those lines of reading, that something may kick off. For all you know, centuries ago, an ancestor was involved in something like that ritual, and then this memory resurfaces itself into your, should we say, waking consciousness. You know, and then that's what exactly what you said at the beginning when you started the Shabbat. You don't know when, but it will, because we're not in charge of the process. The process happens when, yeah, we made ourselves ready. And one of the most important places to be ready is here, because what's in the mind determines everything else, you know?
That's true.
It's so true. What would you both say to people who might say, well, yes, I know that I'm a descendant of the motherland. I don't have connection to my ancestors. They're dead. And you're telling me to pay homage. They're dead. What can they really do for me? What would you say to them?
Yeah, people say that one a lot. What I would say is similar to what I just said before. You know, whether your ancestors are dead or not, we can all kind of go down the scientific route and say, okay, well, if your ancestors came before you and their DNA literally is within you, and now the study of epigenetics will tell you that you can carry, you know, behavioral patterns and characteristics from your ancestors, and fears and phobias and so forth. Then what else are you carrying from your ancestors? That means all those memories, all that knowledge, all that life experience also exists within you. So then when people say, oh, I don't believe the ancestors can help me. Okay, cool. So let's say if you had a grandma or a grandfather or so who's passed on, who was a historian, and you may have a history exam that's coming up in your school, college, or whatever you're doing, you can call on that particular grandparent who has this wealth of wisdom to help you with your studying. This is how we can use our spiritual science to be practical in our daily lives. What we're talking about is not just, oh, call on your ancestors and we're going to be lazy and not do anything about it. You still have to do the work. But what it's doing you is that knowledge is within you that you can utilize and call upon in the way that you need it. So as I've given the example of, you may have an exam to pass, so that knowledge will start coming into your mind. You might start, oh, let me start researching this particular area of history. You may get certain guidance and inspiration of which books to even read to help you with what you're trying to do. So this is how we can utilize our knowledge to help us for the now. And that's just one example. So you can imagine the different ways that we can utilize our ancestral knowledge that is already there, but we just need to tap into it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful that even Ade had said that. The people say, but you're dead. And as Verona said, is how can they be dead when you're carrying their memories in you? So that statement that they're dead in itself is sadly a whole load of ignorance, you know. But then the same person who will say something like this, they will hear the word epigenetics and be like, oh, Western science is so forward thinking and so technologically superior. But you had the same concept, but it just didn't have the label epigenetics on it. So we have to interrogate why we have certain, should we say, I call them falsified consciousness. You know, I have to take the word of it. Educational psychologist I love so much, Amos Wilson, he calls it falsified consciousness. You know, the way we all have it is also because the media trains and primes us to think about certain things in particular ways. So as I said, you hear the word epigenetics and you love the whole explanation of it. But you hear the same concept of, we know that we are our ancestors, because in our many selves, as we discussed at the beginning, you have an ancestral spirit too. And now Western science has only just said that, oh, you carry your ancestors, but it's through your DNA. But the African has also already told you, you have an ancestral self composed of your ancestors. But one for you is superstition, and the other is forward-thinking science. And you see the limbo that we kind of find ourselves when we're not doing just basic research. As I said, we don't need to become African practitioners overnight. But as they say, knowledge is power. At least know about it. so that then you're fully informed as to why you don't even want to know about it. Based on knowing nothing about it,
Yes.
that's an act of ignorance.
Yes, yes, so much in what you both said. You know, the whole thing about genes, they say, oh, because it's in your genetics. So they'll say, oh, tell me about your parent, tell me about your mom, about your dad. They go down the line of dis-ease. You know, things, they predict what they think is going to happen to you.
Right.
Well, genetics can predict what can go wrong health-wise. So clearly, the genetic must be able to predict well-being as well. Which is passed on to you. We didn't come just out of nowhere. You know, we are the physical representation of our ancestors.
Fully.
We are our ancestors.
Yeah.
So when we ask different questions and learning and lighting a candle, the fire itself is alive. It's kind of like social media. When you talk about learning, how you find more information, your senses open up. When we think of social media, the same concept. We can use the concept of social media to reconnect with our ancestors. If you start IG, Instagram for the first time now, you follow certain kind of people, and you like their post, you look at it. What's it going to do? The algorithm is going to give you more of that the next day. That's the first few things you're going to see. Any social media, the more you like it, the more you interact with it, it's going to give you more information. It's going to say, how about this person? Since you follow Dalian, you may want to follow Verona. And you're like, oh my God, they're really dropping truth here. The same thing about learning about ourselves. Like, let me read about it. It opens us up to so much more, being attracted to a book, somebody, a video, just so much. And it is so simple, it's so easy, but we've been conditioned because we've liked and tapped and loved all the other information that we get bombarded on our own mental social media platform that we can't get to the truth of our own self. So we just get video of CNN, BBC, all that other information, and we're like, oh, that's so sad. That's so sad. It's like, no, you got a wealth of liberation tools here.
Yes,
and it takes courage to say, nope, I'm not going on that channel today. Because there's some things that's happening right now that I have to really pull on something deeper to say, I'm not going to watch that video. I no longer want to watch it. I'm not going to have myself desensitized. And I'm not looking for any justice system created by man to help me affirm if people are going to love me for the color of my skin or not. I'm choosing to love and affirm myself, but it takes a certain kind of courage and discipline. And I'm not saying it's a unique thing, but we all can do it.
Oh, yes.
Must be willing.
Oh, yes. So long as you have life.
Exactly.
Yes. There's a question here from Serena. She said, I'm embarking on this journey, I guess a spiritual, African spirituality journey. Can you also talk about African shamanism? And she said, I'm so attracted to learning about my ancestors and shamanism as well. Can you speak to that?
Well, as we mentioned, if you want to start connecting with your ancestors, we actually do have an article on our website called Communicating with Your Ancestors that runs you through some of the ways. So as I mentioned before, it can be via a candle, it could be pouring libation. There's also offerings, which is the act of giving food or something. It may not even be food, it can be anything, but it's like a gesture of giving them something. You know, we're talking about the law of reciprocity here. So it's that creating that balance, that relationship. But most importantly, if you want to connect with your ancestors, the intention. It's always down to intention. If that's what you're wanting to do, then the door is already open. But I would definitely recommend going on our website, having a read of that article and start implementing some of those practices, because this is something that, yes, we have documentaries, we have all these things, but we really encourage people to start making that connection themselves. Yes. There doesn't need to be anybody stopping you or intercepting your relationship with your ancestors. This is something that is in your hands and you can do yourself as soon as you finish watching this video. And I would definitely recommend that as your first step. Make that connection and then observe. See what happens in your outer reality on the back of that. Pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to any signs and symbols that may occur, you know, within the next day, week, so forth. I would find that for me, once I do this, in the beginning when I first did this practice, I noticed changes quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about your level of awareness. You need to be perceptive of what's happening. So
Yes.
your perception of reality will change and adjust the more that you start getting into these practices.
Yes, because that intention that you talked about, Dalian, I'm going to let you come in. I just want to amplify that intention. The intention is that you even think about it. It's like pay attention, right? And then we have intention. So you're focusing from the inside out to something that's important. It is an activating force. I would even say everybody that's listening to this is not by accident.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Either you've been feeling the nudge. Serena says she's embarking on this journey. There is something here for everyone. And I can say this, I can stand by it, that there's something for everyone here to take with them on their journey. Wherever it leads you is wherever it leads you. But your ancestors that lives in you and as you, it's happened on your consciousness.
Yes, all the time. All the time. Yeah, no, you answered it all. And again, you know, I guess you could also add that there's a free e-course too that people can do where the journeys are broken down in more depth, you know, because as V's mentioned, and this is very key, and it also speaks that back to Serena about African shamanism. Yeah, and the core, the locus, the starting point of your power is you. You know, it's you and your energetic frequency that you, I guess, implode outwards to others, as you said. And again, we go to that word intention coming from within and outwards to the external reality. So it starts with that trusting and knowing self. This is where that, should we say, power consciousness has to start, because it's about learning, again, your soul purpose. And that's what we're talking about, again, soul liberation and soul purpose. So that's really how you start by walking into shamanism, because it's about accepting your gifts. That you have to be comfortable with the fact that you have a gift, you know. So
Something is happening, but we ain't gonna flash it or say anything about it.
You nearly got me to I nearly, yep. So that's definitely what it is, Serena. You have to embrace self. What all faults, power, strength, weaknesses, and merge them together into a workable ecosystem.
Yes.
Because there's space for all those bits. And this idea that you can cut off a certain part of yourself is quite it's different. But then, you know, work with all the aspects of yourself. That's what shamanism is about. It's about discovering your inherent power.
It'd be pretty ignorant of a branch to say, I'm up here, I got a better view, I don't need my roots. Can somebody please cut the roots? Because I can see. The minute you cut the roots, you're like, wait, I don't see anything. This is simply about connecting with your roots. It sustains you, holds you up. I mean, I guess there was a time where I didn't really fully understand it, especially growing up in Nigeria. I was born here, I grew up in Nigeria, and my understanding of African spirituality, our culture, Yoruba tradition, was it was evil. That's what I grew up with. It wasn't until I got to America that I'm like, why are people telling me I'm a Yoruba priestess? Yanda Van Zandt will come every day to speak in Atlanta, and I'm not every day, but regularly, and I would go, and I'm inspired. I'm a Yoruba priestess. And I'm like, I realized something was missing here. So you guys are giving something away. You have a giveaway, and you have a question, and then after that, I got another question for you. So you're giving a copy of your DVD.
I like the light system.
The light is a bit strong. This is our first film, Ancestral Voices, Esoteric African Knowledge. So we're giving away 2 copies today, and I believe the question will come up on the screen shortly. Ade, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
The whoever answers it first in the chats, I guess they win in that order.
What is the name for a traditional South African healer? Do not read the chat and don't Google it. Somebody already Googled it in the chat room.
Maybe you should give them a time, Ade, so nobody goes.
Yes. Do we have a time? We don't. We have a time, but I gotta do a screen share. Oh, let's see. Well, look at that. Serena, does your first does your first answer disqualify her? No, it doesn't.
Yes, beautiful. Wow, that was quick.
So Serena's got it right, and we you guys are giving away two copies, right? So we need one more in the chat room. So yes, Leslie, how do you want to get the? Do you want them to send a message through our page, the Facebook page? Leslie's going to answer me because we need to get your. Okay, cool. Leslie's going to message you, Serena, and to get the mailing address and everything and all that good stuff. Yeah, she's excited. She's doing it happy. Oh yeah, my ancestors. Oh boy. So before as we get ready to release this conversation, we need one more person. Serena got it, and then one more person. Well, it's pretty there now. I mean, come on. All you got to do is just type in the chat room. We already said Serena got it right. And anyway, I mean, the last thing we need to do is literally walk into your house, like just by listening. What I want to ask you both is, you've been doing this for at least 11 years, because you were doing it even before the documentary came out, right? What is one thing, maybe even your own individual dream, desire, that you want people to get from your work? And it could be something where you sometimes, maybe both of you are sitting down and you're like, people are really responding well, but I just wish. What is that one thing that you really feel like if people could just get it, oh my God, we'll feel like the work is done? I want to go to Verona because she got the smile on her face because she closed her eyes earlier, like, yeah.
But I think for me,
have you got the full question? I think.
Yeah, he's like, what do I like?
What is that thing that you sometimes wish people were getting? Like, I just wish they could see and hear or get.
What I would love is to be able to kind of just go outside and just see people just be so like confident and embracing their spiritual heritage. So like people can have like public shrines and stuff that are just out in the street. So in the way that you said you go to Japan and you see there's like shrines where people will go, I would love to see the African equivalent of that in the so-called Western world, because I just think that is when people are saying, I don't care what people say. Like we give offerings and stuff outside all the time, and I'm sure people are watching what we're doing, but now I don't really watch. I don't care. Like, I'm doing what I'm doing here. But I just want us to all get to that point where you just see it and it's normal. Or you can have like heads of states blatantly embracing their African culture and praying to an African like energy force, and it's no big deal. Like, we're just like, yeah, of course, that's what we do. I would love that. So I just want that unapologetic, proud, open practicing, and just like, yeah, we're here, we've arrived, this is what we do, this is who we are. And I want to see that on like a global scale.
I so get you on that. I'm coming to you, Dalian. It's because things like that are being done, but just not from not so much an African perspective. The Church of England, when just the things, they have their own rituals of things that is done so openly that we just accept. But then our expression is kind of look like, but I love that you're saying that you don't really care. You do your rituals, and they're probably like, oh, there's that ancestor. What's that lady? That lady. Those two. Yeah. Verona and Dalian. They're doing the ancestral thing. But you must bring Jesus a present. Jesus is an ancestor to Christianity. But anyway,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So pretty much. I think for me is also the same thing that Verona has just mentioned, because when we can reach such a stage where difference is not a threat to someone else, we have a state of equanimity. We have a better world. Yeah, we start to address, because we all know very much that this imbalance started in a particular way, in the particular abuse of a certain culture and tradition and people that people felt to define as an antithesis. So for us to return back, or should we say turn the world the right way up, we need to go and respect that which was disrespected in the first place. And in having our traditions just as openly celebrated as any other tradition. Because we've had this long conversation dealing with the concept of ancestral memory and the ancestral self. that it will actually assist a lot more Africans come into their sense of self, so we can become a productive part of humanity. Yeah, because with this, everyone is tapping into what their full capabilities are. Because very often in this existence anyway, the difference between a person who's successful and the other that isn't is just opportunity. You know, yeah. If they had one computer in their school, that could have changed the whole. We would have a Bill Gates that was possibly 100 times more than the Bill Gates that we know. But currently, that person is stuck in a so-called village where the IMF is deciding whether they can eat a meal a day or not. Do you understand? So once we have this kind of energetic imbalance, we always were in this state of dysfunction. So what I would like to see is this allowance so that our traditions can be there, as we said, unapologetically. So it starts to activate the right type of ancestral consciousness that we need to have a balanced existence. I would love that, you know?
Yes, I'm with you. And that's part of the way that we liberate the soul of Africans in the diaspora and in the motherland, because we are showing up unapologetically. We are representing ourselves to the world in a whole new way. And we are not afraid, because once we release that fear, people around us are either going to move out the way or be more interested. But sometimes we get so caught up in the fear that we think we're going to get crucified. Yeah, you're going to get crucified. You're going to get crossed out. If you show up, that fear is going to get crossed out. And there is no resurrection without crucifixion anyway. Yeah. So it's like bringing all of them saying, okay, I'm going to try this, because really it's for me. Whatever I'm doing, my learning, my rituals, is for my soul. It's for my lineage. It's for my ancestors. It's for those who are yet to come. And look into the justice system created by the white man, and I'm just going to say it exactly like that, to bring justice is not the way. Now, it can happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, but true justice comes from within. When we find that justice, it comes with knowing that we are not a slave to ourselves. We're not enslaved in our own minds. We know who we are. We don't have to fight to prove ourselves. We just show up as who we are. Like, what do you mean? You don't know about me? Okay, I ain't got time to explain to you. But anyway, we know about you too.
I like that.
I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much,
Baba. Yes, I give thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Before you go, I know we're releasing it, but I do. Yes, go ahead.
Congratulations as well.
Yes, indeed. Is there anything else you want to promote, that you want to talk about? So don't be bashful or anything like that. Is there anything that you want people to know that you're doing on your site or that's coming up?
Nothing specific to promote, but if anyone's enjoyed the conversation today and wants to find out more about what we do and all the range of learning resources we have available, including books, DVDs, courses, the whole 9 yards, articles, our website is ancestralvoices.co.uk. Wonderful.
Beautiful. And I guess the only thing that I will put out there, because it's very recent, is that our latest course is called The Transformative Self, and it deals with exactly that core theme of liberation, because that liberation deals with how you change over time, when I met Ade, he didn't have that lovely silver-colored mane over here. He looked different. Ade had same as me, mine wasn't so long, perhaps. So we're all in a state of condition. And what we have is our first series of learning that looks again at, excuse me, that's so bad.
That's your ancestors calling you.
Yeah,
they're like,
right? That time.
It's time to do another ritual.
Right on time. Yeah, so we look at the quantum science in some of our African spiritual concepts, because we had a conversation about epigenetics. The idea is to help us find ourselves within that Western scientific discourse, to help again break down some of our fears. So the transformative self is one of the things I would just like to call out, because it's relatively new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ancestralvoices.co.uk, ancestralvoices.co.uk. You can also find them on YouTube. Just type Ancestral Voices. There's enough content. There's enough information. Boy, you see the professor in action.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Brother
Thank you
Ayo,
very much.
see you again
Thank
as
you
well.
so
Thank
much.
you for
Yes,
keeping
indeed.
the link all these years. Yeah.
Man.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Ooh, wow. Ooh. It's getting hot in here. Oh, that was funny. To me, it was funny. Leslie was like, what just happened? Leslie was going to make her appearance to wrap up the show. Like, no, not now. Anyway, thank you, beautiful people. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, ancestors, for speaking through each and every one of us. And I am just so grateful for everyone. Shoyuka is in the house. Thank you. And those of you who joined us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. Thank you, everyone, for being here. There's so much, and as I always say, you had aha moments, you had sparkles, you had things come up for you. If you want to deepen the experience, check out my website, lifecoachade.com, lifecoachade.com. And I also invite you, when you get to my website, or if you say, no, I'm good, I got what I needed, I invite you to go to my website and sign the mailing list. We're sending out monthly, once a month, updates of things that are coming up and goodies and stuff like that. Life Coach ADE, lifecoachade.com. Check it out. I think that is it. I am full, am grateful, and I thank all of you for being here, for your energy. Kwali, Dorothy, Serena, let me scroll up. New Jays, Dora, nice to see you. Kiana was here. Tina was here. Charlie was here. Those are the people that, well, I may have missed some people, so please forgive me. And there are those of you who were listening, who are not in the chat room. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Your presence makes a difference. And I want you to know that I love you, I bless you, and I appreciate you, and I thank God for you. And a quick reminder, check out womensjourneyretreat.com. That's my friend Kathy Stringer. She's doing a retreat for women's, this weekend, Saturday the 17th, Sunday the 18th. Go there. If you sign up, make sure you use the promo code WJ2021-LCA. I love that. Leslie, I think we're good, right? We're good. I'm grateful. Yes, indeed. Serena, you're right. She said, thank you. This was a divine appointment for you, for me, for us. It truly is. Thank you for being here. And once again, we just invite you to like and share the show. It's going to be archived. Like our page, Facebook, facebook.com/being you. And we're just going to give you a little bit more because, as if you don't have enough to do. If you go to youtube.com/LC Radio, just subscribe because we're building that too. We're building a lot of things. So join the conversation so we can bring more shows like this to you. Once again, I love you, I bless you, I appreciate you, and I thank God for you. And I just invite you to take this consciousness and do what with it and multiply it. We're out.
Be who you are. Let your light shine.